Time to start? Okay. Hello? Yeah. Oh, it's working. Very good. Hello. Good evening. I am Valerie Krejci, member of the League of Women Voters of Evanston, and I am a resident of Skokie. I would like to welcome everyone here this evening on behalf of the League and our co-sponsor, Skokie Public Library. The forum we are presenting this evening is for the Village of Skokie at-large trustees and is scheduled to run for an hour. First of all, some housekeeping. A reminder to everyone to check that their electronic devices are silenced. Please, no flash photography. Photos are okay, excluding the audience, but video and audio recording of the forum is not allowed. The forum is being filmed in its entirety and will be available on both the League and the library websites once this full week of forums is complete. The League of Women Voters is a nonpartisan political organization that encourages informed and active participation in government. The League works to increase understanding of major public policy issues, observes governing bodies, and provides information for the voters at election time. The League does not support or oppose any political party or candidates. If you would like to find out more about the League, stop by our table in the lobby. We'd like to thank our student volunteer from Niles North High School, there's a timer down front here, for their valuable assistance for all 3 nights of the forum. They helped on other nights too. Tonight, our volunteer is one of the timers. Oh, that's part of my script. Okay, we are very excited always to have students involved in anything the League does. Questions for this evening are a compilation of email submissions from the Skokie community groups, individual Skokie residents, and the League of Women Voters. We received many excellent questions, but due to time allowed, we are unable to use all of them. To find out more about when and where to vote, what is on your ballot, voter registration, and more, key websites are listed on the flyer that was handed out at the door. If you need a copy, you can pick up another one at the table out front. After the forum, we will be able to meet the candidates next door in the Rodmacher room. That's in an hour. For all League forums, we engage a moderator that resides outside of the district for the race. Tonight, our moderator is Carol Russ, who currently serves as president of the League of Women Voters of Lake Forest, Lake Bluff. She has served on the Plan Commission and Architectural Board of Review in Lake Bluff. When she is not engaged with architectural drawings, she is a trainer at Target. In addition to the League, she devotes volunteer time to Lake Bluff Open Lands and Green Drinks Libertyville. So now I'll hand over the forum to our moderator, Carol Russ.
Thank you, Valerie, and welcome again to everyone, including the audience. We need you, too, to make government work. We have candidates here tonight for Skokie trustee that you will see 4 candidates on your ballot for 2 positions. All 4 were invited to appear here, and 3 were able to appear here, so thank you very much. The candidates will speak in a moment, but let me say a couple comments before we introduce the candidates. This is not a debate. I don't know what your expectations are, but we are not expecting the candidates to engage in back and forth with each other. This is a forum, we call it, because we like them to speak directly to you, to the voter. They're here tonight to ask for your vote. We want them to speak to you. We want them to speak about issues, not, personalities that sometimes get in the way of a content presentation. So thank you very much, candidates, for your willingness to agree to the ground rules for tonight's event. That's one very important one. And also in the ground rules, they were asked to prepare a 2-minute opening statement and a 1.5-minute closing statement. So they did have time to give some thought to what they'd like to say to you, but in the middle, we will have some questions they have not seen. So a little forbearance. It's hard to be extremely eloquent and spontaneous at the same time. I'm sure they'll do a great job. But once we move into that section, we'll move along pretty quickly. But we will begin with those opening statements. Our 3 candidates are Khem Khoeun on your left, in the middle, Joseph Nowik, and on the end, Gail Schechter. They are sitting in alphabetical order, and so we will begin that way, and we'll begin with the candidate statement, the opening remarks from Khem Khoeun, please.
Thank you, Carol. Good evening. I'm Khem Khoeun, and I'm honored to be here tonight as a candidate for re-election as Skokie at-large trustee. My husband and I moved to Skokie 20 years ago, right before we got married. We started out in a tiny 2-bedroom apartment on the north side of Skokie, had 2 kids, and when it was time to buy a home, we realized that we didn't need to move far. Skokie was already home to us. I am the daughter of refugees. My parents fled the Cambodian genocide, and I arrived here in the US when I was 7 months old. English was my second language, and I didn't learn to speak it until I entered public school. My background led me to a life of service, first as a social worker, then as a director of organizing for one of the largest immigrant-led coalitions in the country, and now as a product manager focused on health and care navigation. I've also served on several non-for-profit boards. In 2017, I ran for office for the first time and won. At a time when immigrants and women were under attack, I stepped forward, becoming the first Cambodian American woman to be elected to any position in the country. Representation matters because how we do things matter. And so when folks came to me early on angry about the harmful imagery in Skokie's village seal, I was adamant that change cannot happen without engaging the Indigenous community. That's why I co-chaired a committee with our Human Relations Chair and an Indigenous Affairs expert at Northwestern University, who is Indigenous herself and a Skokie resident. 3 years later, we are finally bringing that recommendation before the village board. I'm not just running on representation, I'm running on progress and results. In the village government, you need to be able to work with your colleagues to get things done. I'm proud to continue Skokie's commitment to keeping the village portion of property tax flat for the 35th consecutive year. We need strong economic development to do this, and while malls and neighboring communities are struggling, Skokie took action to ensure that our largest economic engine, Westfield Old Orchard, continues to invest in our village. We revitalized downtown Skokie, welcomed more than 15 new businesses in the past year, and are now shaping a new vision for Main Street Corridor. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And we all appreciate your enthusiasm and clapping. I'm so happy you're here. You even clapped for our student timer. That was lovely. But this is the candidates' time, so we really want to move along quickly, and we also don't want to interrupt their thought process with any verbal comments. So please, let's refrain from that, and let's just move ahead swiftly and give the candidates all of the time that we can. Our second presenter is Joseph Nowik.
Hello, my name is Joe Nowik, and I'm running to be your Skokie at-large trustee because I believe in a transparent, fiscally responsible, and community-driven government that works for all residents. I've lived in Skokie since 1986 and have spent over 20 years serving our community, the last 10 as the D219 board member. Public service is personal to me. My father was a World War II refugee who found opportunity here in Chicago, became a self-taught welder and sheet metal fabricator, proudly served as the union steward of the local sheet metal union. My brother dedicated his career to protecting our communities as a Chicago police officer. Their example taught me that leadership is about showing up, listening, and making smart, fair decisions that put people first. As trustee, I will focus on several things. 1, keeping Skokie affordable for families, seniors, and homeowners. Supporting local businesses and revitalizing our commercial districts. Bringing more transparency to village government so residents have a real voice. And ensure responsible economic growth that benefits everyone in Skokie. Skokie is a diverse, hardworking community that deserves leadership committed to its future. I'm ready to bring my experience, integrity, and dedication to village government, and I look forward to earning your support. A special thank you to the League of Women Voters of Evanston and the Skokie Public Library for hosting this forum. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And we have a third presentation, and down at the Alphabet Challenge end of the table, we have Gail Schechter.
We don't feel seen. We don't feel heard. Time and again, Skokie residents express this frustration with their own elected officials. I am running for at-large trustee because the people of Skokie deserve a leader who consistently shows up for them. I've lived in Skokie for over 20 years with community development and civil rights work in Skokie that goes back 30 years. I've prevented the village from instituting discriminatory policies and practices, developed and taught an immigrant civic leadership curriculum, and chaired the Skokie Alliance for Electoral Reform to Victory for open and fair elections. For decades, suburban elected officials have sought me out as the go-to expert on fair and affordable housing, and I've worked with residents across the North Shore for just communities. I have a master's degree in urban and environmental policy and a 40-year career of accomplishment as a nonprofit executive director, service provider, educator, and practical visionary. Skokie has what it takes for everyone to be successful in every community. As your trustee, I will engage residents around a vision of Skokie as a safe, convivial, and economically thriving set of neighborhoods where people want to live, shop, study, and work. As evidenced by the resounding votes for electoral reform, Skokie residents hunger for elected officials who are accountable to them, who respond to their calls the first time and not the 10th time, who stand on principles of fairness and respect. I will be that trustee. Impact for Equity gave me their Champion of the Public Interest Award for a good reason. I stand up for what's right and I get it done.
Thank you very much. Now we're going to move into a slightly different segment where we have questions to pose to the candidates. This can be a little bit stressful to come in under the time limit, but we'll do what we can, and our rotation may seem a little counterintuitive. Sometimes it seems like we're skipping over a person, but I assure you they'll all get equal time to be the first responder. So we'll just get started and with question number one. As Valerie said, these questions came from many venues, and the league struggled to make them into different categories that would cover as much territory as possible. So we'll just do our best to be thorough. And the first question, which will go to Khem, is how can the village communicate with residents, particularly those stakeholders who will be impacted by an upcoming board decision, in advance of that decision? Are any changes to the current system needed? So the question is about communication.
Yeah, I hear a lot about transparency. I think when we look at transparency, there's a number of different ways that we look at that, right? And so how are we communicating information, getting information out to residents? When I first joined as a board member, we didn't even have presence on social media. So the fact that our other local municipalities had social media presence and the village of Skokie did not was indicative of how far behind the times we were. I think communication is key. How do we get information in a way that is easy, digestible to our community members, have broad outreach and scope? It's not only in social media, but also thinking about how we engage people in person and meeting them where they're at. A lot of people are not comfortable, don't want to come to give a village board meetings, and a lot of times those village board meetings are when actions are being made. And so we need to find ways that we can engage members early in the process. And so for those key decisions, I'm committed that we find ways to host listening sessions, have quarterly town halls with our residents, because that is something that we do hear is missing in our community, and it's something I'm open to continue to have conversations about and how to implement that village-wide. Thank you.
Thank you. And now Joe Nowik, would you respond to the same question?
Yeah, so I'll share my my communication issues as a D219 board member, because I think it's applicable here. We get our packet per the law 48 hours in advance of the meeting. Then we have to review that entire packet and all the issues in it within that timeline. For board members, that's our responsibility to make it so. But for community members to have that same restricted amount of time, I find a major issue. What I would propose is whenever an agenda item of significant importance comes up to the Skokie village, that they get additional advanced posting of those issues, the pros and cons, maybe some of the discussion that took place to get that onto the agenda, and then giving more time to the residents to absorb and understand that issue, as well as the board members to absorb and understand the issue. I think that would dramatically help communication. The other thing I would like to do in terms of communication is I would like to make sure that when decisions are made and they're split decisions, that every trustee would specify why they voted the way they do. I think a lot of times you'll just get a yay or nay without the underlying reasons, and I think the residents deserve to understand those underlying reasons. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Our third response to this question will come from Gail Schechter.
Yes, I think the real issue around communication about ordinances is having clear rules. Residents don't necessarily know, or businesses, what's going on. Which commission is this going to? I worked on a situation with taxi cab drivers in Skokie who were suddenly told 2 months before Christmas that they could no longer park on the street or in uncovered driveways. And when this was their only car, did they have to move? Did they have to quit their jobs? The village claimed that a year before they had told taxi cab companies. There was no communication whatsoever. Fortunately, I was able to work with the Taxi Cab Organizing Project, the American Service Committee, the Council of Islamic Organizations, because most of those cab drivers are Pakistani Muslims, to put the brakes on this. And we were able to get the village board to change that out. But this happens time and again where decisions are made and nobody knows where it's coming from or what the process is. So something has to be made very clear. I would do this as trustee. I would make it crystal clear what the processes are in different languages and treating residents and businesses with consideration.
Okay, thank you very much. We'll move on to the next question, and we will begin with a different person. This time we'll begin with Joe Nowik. And I would like to take a couple extra seconds on this because it is a long question. So the overall question is about the tools for economic development, but in the hopes that we can squeeze in a little bit more information, could you also comment on how we would do that with small business? So let me read the question now, and then we'll begin. So first part, what is the role of the village to encourage or control economic development, and what tools seem to work best? And also, please, if you could say, what actions, if any, do you think the village of Skokie should take to support the business community, especially the small businesses?
Thank you. One of the tools that I believe we need for economic development in Skokie is a nice steady infusion of resources, whether they're public or private or through a public or private cooperative. Monies coming into our village will help revitalize certain areas, and I think those monies need to then be completely focused by the board in terms of where they're needed. Another area that I believe that economic issues has come in is when we negotiate with, I'll give you an example, when we negotiate with Old Orchard, I wasn't in the room when the sausage was made. However, if I was negotiation, and I have negotiated with the Teamsters and many unions, including the toughest, the Illinois teachers, I think it's imperative that when we settle to give that area a 1% increase, we should have gotten a portion of it back that we could then use as seed money for our other economic areas of the community. The fact that we put all our eggs in one basket and they wound up having all of the resources accumulated for net sales tax really didn't help the rest of Skokie as much as I believe it could have if we negotiated a better deal on behalf of the residents and the entire village.
Okay, thank you very much. Our next responder will be Gail Schechter.
Yes, in Skokie, we have a very haphazard approach to economic development. A lot of it feels like we're desperate. We have a piece of land, nobody wants to build here. Hey, the first person who comes, we're going to get them to sign a contract. That is not what economic development is. Economic is based on consideration of what the people want, what the opportunities are, and not an over-reliance on outside investment. 70% of Skokie's revenues come from sales and property taxes. That's not necessarily the most stable source of funding, especially when there's a downturn as there was with the pandemic. So what I would do as trustee is make sure that we are investing in our small businesses. Skokie had a small business grant program that somehow no longer exists. And also, Skokie needs to really consider what it's doing when it creates districts like the TIF district downtown, or the Old Orchard blight tax. It's really important for us in Skokie to not just create these districts which feel like kind of a race to the bottom, but instead consider ourselves as a place where companies would be fortunate and to develop here.
Okay, thank you. And our final responder to this question will be Khem Khoeun.
I want to start by saying that Skokie has experienced significant growth, particularly in our downtown area, with 15 new businesses in the past year. We've had numerous new business opening their doors, and in 2022, 3,700 building permits were issued, representing construction value of $100 million. When we talk about ways that we can support businesses and vehicles so that we can do that, partnership is going to be really important. Being able to develop a vision of what we want that area to be like. We've seen a lot of community support and collaboration, and also working with our local legislators, getting funding to support Main Street development. And so having a vision for Main Street, for instance, on what that commercial corridor will look like will help to attract developers and investors that would want to come and be a part of that vision. Another thing I'm really excited about is the establishment of a Pan-Asian Center right here in Skokie. They've been looking at various communities, and we've been talking to them and how Skokie would be a place that would be important for them, because we do have about 30% Asian Americans represented in this community. It can also be a destination center and attract other additional businesses, nonprofits, and organizations as well. So that's something I'm really excited and look forward to continuing to work with the village on. Thank you.
Thank you all. Well done. That was a complicated question, and I'm sure you could have talked for a very long time if we let you, so thank you. We do need to move on because we have other topical areas to cover. So the first responder for this question will skip to Gail Schechter. She will be the first responder, and the question is, how have you informed yourself about Skokie residents who face health and economic challenges? And what is the village's role in assisting them?
My whole career has been based around working with people at a very grassroots level around their economic challenges. Ever since I was working with tenants in landlord-abandoned buildings in Brooklyn, New York, all the way through today, where I operate home, housing opportunities, and maintenance for the elderly for low-income seniors in Chicago. I'm always out there talking to people, recognizing as well that people are not going to necessarily come to me. We have to go to them, which is something that we're not seeing enough of in the village of Skokie. Most of our communications relate to inviting people to come to Village Hall. So it's very important to go out and talk to people, also to talk to community groups and experts. Skokie is really fortunate, along with Evanston, to have a number of groups that work with people with disabilities, work with people who are experiencing homelessness, and these are getting out to where people are at, rather than waiting for them to come to us. And working with groups around the village is extremely important, and that's how I will operate as a trustee.
Okay, thank you. Our next responder to the same question about health and economic challenges, we'll hear from Khem Khoeun.
So I came into the village board in 2021 in the middle of a pandemic. Skokie was the first municipalities to actually have the mask mandate. We have one of the few accredited health departments in the state of Illinois. So when we talk about health and what the village of Skokie is doing, we are one of the leaders in terms of being able to get people vaccinated and do the outreach into our communities. We work with partners so that we have a facility available so that our members can get vaccinated at a time when there were questions about how to get vaccinated, where to go to, and we were one of the leaders in that. So that's a prime example of what we're already doing, and we'll continue to do as the village takes the leadership on health. Around economic ways that we can support our members, I think about the village's commitment to the property tax freeze. We've maintained that for 35 consecutive years in a row. There's a reason for that. It has been a flat tax of $15.4 million, which means that as your property tax is rising, most of that is coming from your local schools, the park districts, libraries. There's a certain percentage of that, but the village portion has always been flat. And the reason for that is because we're able to leverage retail business revenue so that it can help cover the budget that the village has. And that's how we're able to help our families focus on the things that matter to them rather than having increased property taxes.
Okay. Our final response will come from Joe Nowik.
So public safety and community well-being is very important to me. As serving on the D219 board during the pandemic, the entire board made the conscientious decision to keep everyone whole because we knew the impact of the pandemic is economically detrimental to so many folks. The cafeteria people were kept whole even though there were no students to feed at the time. But what we did is we set up a food exchange program outside of the school, wearing masks and doing all the safety protocols in place, where families were able to pick up meals during the school day because we knew how important it was to maintain that effort to feed our kids during that pandemic, as well as serving their family. We kept our security people whole, we kept our teachers whole, and that was a primary effort to make sure that we told our community that this pandemic needs to be handled in a very humane way for all the employees. And I would also apply that as serving as a trustee to Skokie. I think we need to straighten our community policing and public safety initiatives. We made some progress there, but we could do more. And I'd also would like to expand mental health resources and crisis intervention services because we're not doing enough there. Thank you.
All right, thank you. We'll move on to a new question. And our first responder will be Khem Khoeun. I can repeat the question anytime anybody wants, but this is a new one. So what do you see as the role of Skokie government in maintaining and promoting environmental sustainability?
I think that Skokie Skokie plays a critical role in that. We just went through a comprehensive sustainability plan that gave guidelines and a framework for how we're going to move forward, looking at the village services, our buildings and municipality within the village of Skokie itself. What are the things that we can do to help us to achieve our goal? I think that's something that while the village is able to provide guidance and leadership on, it's something that cannot be achieved alone. We need to engage our residents, our businesses, looking at our local governmental partners, whether it's the park districts, the schools, to figure out what are the things that we can achieve together. One of the things that we've talked about through our commissions, because each of our commissions have also been engaged in a task force to evaluate what are the methodologies. One of the things that we talked about is incentivizing businesses to go green. It helps to have members aware of those businesses that are adopting green practices for them to be recognized. And then it's a way that we can engage our businesses to be informed and educated on something that may be intimidating or less familiar to them, but it's a way that we need to engage our business partners because this is not something that we can do alone.
Okay, thank you. Our next responder will be Joe Nowik.
Skokie needs to be the leader in terms of sustainability and environmental issues. As we all just witnessed, addressing stormwater management as well as flooding prevention is critical for our community, and we need to be proactive to make sure that we evaluate our system to make sure there's redundancies in other areas. As a mechanical engineer, reviewing a system that's 70, 80 years old is my understanding, many of those safeguards were probably not taken at the time, and I believe that with modern technology we can do so and really prevent a catastrophe from happening again. Another environmental issue that needs to be discussed is the rat infestation problem. It's been a growing problem for several years, and I think that Skokie needs to increase its efforts in terms of identifying the causes, make sure that when we find that the rodent's lair, that we take the necessary precautions to make sure that we prevent them from spreading. Finally, I think green initiatives in terms of benefits. When I put up my solar panels on my house, I received initiatives from the federal government and the state government, but there was no incentives from the local government. And I believe that we could creatively make those incentives available, maybe through lower fees when we apply for various permits and things of that nature, to again incentivize people to be green and more efficient. Thank you.
Thank you. And our final responder to the question about environmental sustainability will be Gail Schechter.
Skokie absolutely has a role to play around environmental sustainability and resilience. Skokie does have a very good sustainability plan, and with over 200 measures in it, and a lot of them are fairly sweeping and should be paid attention to. The overall character of Skokie really making a difference is embedding sustainability goals and conservation goals in everything Skokie does. One of the points in that sustainability plan is under land use, that every consideration that Skokie makes has to cross-check against, will this have an environmental impact? Another important piece is Skokie as a place, not a throughway. And so to do that means really concentrating on safe walking, safe bicycling, creating plazas. All this is not only good for the environment, it also builds community. We can be also taking a look at ordinances. We have a heating ordinance. How about a cooling ordinance to make sure that renters, for example, have air conditioning? So taking a look at all of the things that we have in place and seeing what the sustainability and environmental impacts are.
Okay, thank you. We're on to a new topic. The first responder will be Joe Nowik, and our question is, do you believe that the current Skokie housing policies need to be changed?
Yes, I think that organically Skokie was designed 50 years ago as a community that built relatively affordable small homes that brought in, and we currently do have a significant amount of affordable housing. However, the dynamics of the North Shore is changing and the demographics of our residents is changing, and we're tending to get more affluent people moving into Skokie. So we need to consider options to, if the goal for Skokie, and I believe it is the goal for Skokie, that we have a diverse population both ethically as well as economically, we need to work and create land trusts and other opportunities for folks to have affordable housing and get all the benefits that we have here in Skokie in terms of our services. But we need to be smart about it. I don't believe a one-size-fit-all mandate to any new development is really the answer, and I think we have to be more nuanced about it and more creative about it to make sure that we focus on where the development is taking place, what it has replaced in the past, and what we can do to make sure that we optimize that value of that property for all of Skokie and not just developers.
Thank you. Next, same question to Gail Schechter.
Absolutely, Skokie needs better housing policies. Right now, we have about 8,000 residents that are hurting, that are paying more than they can afford in their housing costs, be they renters or homeowners. What we need to do, first of all, and I helped to start a grassroots group called Skokie Neighbors for Housing Justice. And what we called for, number one, is a study. We need a customized study of housing need in this village and opportunities. We also need to recognize that the state figure, because we've heard the village talk about, well, we have 20% affordable housing, according to a state metric. That says absolutely nothing about the extent to which current residents are hurting. It doesn't say whether that 20% is living in housing that is large enough for them. It doesn't say if all those affordable units happen to be studio units. It doesn't say what their conditions are. So there are things we can be doing to preserve current affordable housing, things that we can be doing to promote mixed income housing. We have a new ordinance that just needs to be completely rewritten. And as well, we need to take a look at ancillary measures like fair housing enforcement and protections related to code enforcement. But we can do this.
Thank you. Final response from Khem Khoeun.
So when it comes to housing, there's a couple of things. I stand behind my vote as far as supporting inclusionary housing ordinance in Skokie. We've never had one, and we finally have one in place. I understand that for some folks it's too much, and for some folks it's not enough. But it's a place that we start, and it's where we draw the line in the sand to show our commitment to making sure that we have affordable housing in Skokie. It's also recognizing that housing is a national issue. There's a shortage of units that are available. Skokie is not unique in that, but there are things that we can certainly do about that. One is having a comprehensive housing study. I believe in data, and so we saw that there were problems with the data that's coming in from the state. I'd like to be able to define what those data points are and be able to measure that over time so that we can understand the impact that the recent policy change had in Skokie. Did it make it better? Did it make it worse in terms of encouraging development in Skokie? And also, did we actually achieve our goal for increasing affordable housing units in Skokie? We also want to make sure that we're continuing to support older housing stock that is considered affordable, but maybe not in the best condition. So we want to make sure that we're providing support to rehabilitate that and get the upgrades that it needs in order to get compliant. And finally, establishing a land trust. I think that's really important for us to have that funding set aside. And again, I do believe in public and private partnerships. Once we have that land trust available, opportunities that we can work with the community, work with outside developers and nonprofits in order to make more housing affordable for our residents here in Skokie.
Thank you. Well, you all are doing an absolutely bang-up job staying on task. Our timers working hard to hold up their cards, but you've been perfect. We're going to shift gears just a little bit. There are so many topical areas. We probably couldn't do them all in a week if we were here. But so let's approach it in a different way. Can you tell us, what do you believe? Oh, Gail, you'll be the first responder. So I want you to listen carefully, now that you know you're first. So our question is, what do you believe are the top 3 challenges that the village faces today?
The top 3 challenges that the village faces is rebuilding trust between, number one, rebuilding trust between the residents of Skokie and their village government. We've had decades of one-party rule with little debate and little sense that the village board has to be accountable to the people. That was evidenced in the Carvana decision just 3 years ago, where hundreds of residents said no, environmental experts said no, the village board, all the ones from the parties that's been in power, all said yes. So that disconnect has to be addressed. The second is economic development. We need to retool our economic development so that we see ourselves in the driver's seat, not reactive, but proactive, doing things to help local businesses and local workers. And the third thing we need to do is our comprehensive plan. We have a comprehensive plan that's almost 25 years old. It's outdated. It can't be piecemealed. With fixing a chapter here and there. We need to bring people together, all of those people who have come back together because we've rebuilt trust in government to work together on that comprehensive vision.
Okay, thank you very much. Our next responder on the same question, the top 3 challenges, will come from Khem Khoeun.
The way I look at public safety and looking at our welcoming ordinance is really critical, especially during this period of time. There's a lot of members in our community who are scared, who are afraid, who don't know what might happen to them. And so one of the things that we're doing is going back and revisiting our welcoming ordinance from 2017 to make sure that any gaps or loopholes are going to be codified into law. So it doesn't matter who is mayor, who is the chief of police at the time, but it's codified into our law. That our streets are safe, that people feel welcome in our communities. The other piece is talking about property tax freeze, maintaining that, and economic development. When I joined in 2021, it was in the middle of a pandemic. Our village manager presented a number of options because we had shortfalls in our tax revenue, and every year it's something that we have to consider. Are we able to sustain this or not? And so it's not something that we want to take for granted, but in order to support that, we need to make sure that we continue to have robust economic development in our community. And finally, investing in our infrastructure. The village is currently investigating to figure out what happened to the water main break, what caused that. We're bringing in outside consultant to come in and analyze the risk so that we are being proactive and doing everything we can to make sure this does not happen again. This was something that was supposed to be good with a 80 to 100-year lifespan, and it broke. And so it happened once, but we cannot have that happen again. And so that's something that we're committed to, and making sure that we are being proactive in analyzing the risk and addressing that.
Fantastic. And final response from Joe Nowik, please.
Yeah, so my 3 top issues are economic and financial development. I believe we need to support local businesses and revitalize commercial districts outside of Old Orchard. I hate the idea that we have all our eggs in one basket, and it's far better for us to really develop Main Street, develop Oakton Street, and really make sure that if the goal is to be a greener, walkable, tight-knit community, that we really focus on establishing those community centers, multi-use facilities that allow people to walk to get their food, to walk to get to their convenience store, to walk to get to wherever they need to go, instead of hopping into a car and driving to Old Orchard or a shopping center several miles away and wasting all that fuel and energy. The other area I like to focus on is public safety. I think public safety is always assumed because we have such a wonderful police department here in Skokie and a wonderful fire department, but that doesn't come by accident. We have to make sure that they have all the resources, especially in this day and age where the police department really needs to be mindful of the issues where it's a non-violent issue, but a domestic dispute where they need some social skills to handle it, to eliminate the issue. And the third problem is, I think we need to make sure that Skokie stays clean and has all the utilities necessary to keep it a nice, clean community to enjoy.
Okay, thank you. So that was the top 3 challenges, and I think I made an extra check mark. Khem, were you the first responder that time, or was Gail? I thought Gail was. Thank you very much. I made an extra check mark. I was getting overexcited. So this time, Khem will be our first responder. Moving on to a new question, an entirely new topic. Please give us an example of how you have worked to reach consensus with people with whom you do not always agree.
All right. I will bring up affordable housing because that was a controversial issue. We had folks at the first vote. We had folks on both sides of the issue coming to us at Village Board and telling us not to move forward with this. You had folks who were telling us that we shouldn't have a mandate in place. You had folks that were telling us we weren't doing enough and we need to go higher. And at the end of the day, I wasn't comfortable with what we had at the table. I felt like I need to do more research. I need to understand the issue better. I went back immediately and talked to some of those stakeholders. I actually talked to Gail as one of the stakeholders, and I also went and talked to realtors and folks that felt like we didn't need to have a mandate. I spoke with our economic development director as well, and just getting feedback from residents to get their perspectives. Ultimately, this was something that was very split within the board. And I met with individual board members to kind of understand where they were at and where we need to be in order to pass an ordinance, because at the end of the day, it's better to have something rather than nothing at all. And so it was a compromise, and that was what we needed to do to get it to the finish line. We recognize that it's only a start. There's going to be opportunities to evaluate it over time and understand where we can make changes to understand impact, like I mentioned earlier. But that was a way that I sat and listened to different points of view and was able to bring people together and push a compromise to the finish line.
Thank you. And the same question, how did you forge consensus? Joseph Nowik.
So I wish I could tell you in the 10 years that I served on D219 that all our decisions were 7-0, always everyone agreeing with everything, and that's not the case. Reality is that on many issues, there's a lot of factors on both sides of the issues that need to be discussed and reviewed. I don't have a problem with decisions being a 4-3 decision as long as each side presents the rationale for their mindset and why they voted the way they did. I think the community deserves to understand the rationale. I think the fellow board members deserve to understand that rationale. And once it's clearly out there and the decision is then voted on, and if it is a 4-3 decision, if I'm on the winning side, hey, good for me. If I'm on the losing side, I always make sure that I do not try to affect that decision by chopping it off at the knees and doing any unethical things in terms of trying to have that decision being second guessed. So I think that's the real world, and I think that good, honest people could not sometimes decide on the same thing, and that's fair, and I think people deserve to have their viewpoint, but in the end, respect that viewpoint and work together to get the best for all of Skokie. Thank you.
Thank you. And the final response to the question about reaching consensus goes to Gail Schechter.
Mm-hmm. Yes, so as a community organizer and a practitioner of Kingian nonviolence, that is Dr. King's methodology of conflict resolution, I know that it's important to look at root causes. So when I'm in a group where there are different thoughts, like, for example, it always has come up in the line of my work, do we want affordable housing? Do we not want affordable housing? And I always say, the real issue, what are we really talking about here? We're talking about what kind of community do we want to be? And as soon as you pose the question differently, you can look at something like deliberative democracy. You can look that up. It's a wonderful way of helping to bring different voices to consensus by looking at the root cause issue. So once we do that, I mean, even in Winnetka, we were able, in the work that I had done there around advocacy, come up with a very modest property maintenance code. So in Skokie, I actually had been appointed by the mayor some years ago to be part of a ad hoc landlord-resident committee to look at issues that landlords and residents had tenants with an ordinance. There were different voices on that group, but we came to consensus. We decided, you know what, we don't really need another police officer. What we need is better property maintenance standards.
Okay, thank you very much. We will shift gears again, start with a new question, and the first responder will be Joseph Nowik. The question is, Skokie citizens recently voted for electoral changes. What do you think they are looking for as a result of these changes?
So my perspective is that the caucus party was a monopoly. And like any monopoly, eventually the focus moves from focusing on the residents to focusing on self-preservation. And to me, that is the underlying reason why these referendums came to existence, because it was not recognized that indeed our representatives are not fully focusing exclusively on our issues. It showed up several times in terms of votes that were always 6-1, where the party unanimously voted one way and another trustee voted another. It happened where, and this is what bothered me, is when an idea was presented to the board, and I'll give you the example, is when the idea of having backyard chickens was brought up. Now, your position on backyard chickens shouldn't matter. However, that's worth to discuss, and nobody on the board would even second that to bring it up for discussion or have it go to the Planning Commission and be reviewed. To me, that's wrong. If citizens want something to discuss, they deserve to have it discussed by our representatives, and that didn't happen. And to me, that was an issue. And I think that was the underlying causes of what these referendums created. Thank you.
Thank you. Same question to Gail Schechter.
Well, I was the chair, in fact, of the whole campaign of the Skokie Alliance for Electoral Reform, and I want to emphasize we were a nonpartisan campaign. We were not looking at any one party. What we saw was that the disconnect between the voters and the people in power, and we had pretty much uncontested races for, at least the last 5 election cycles, had a lot to do with the fact that we had a system. It was embedded. It wasn't just a party, but we had an embedded system that favored partisan balloting. The lack of staggered terms also promoted the idea that you could have a full slate, and the fact that we had most of our trustees or people in power lived in one part of town, which is what prompted the idea of this hybrid of at-large and district trustees. But the real underlying issue is that accountability piece. How do we make sure that democracy is opened up to, that residents can vote for who they want to vote for, and people like all of us on this dais have the chance to run on our merits and our values and our track records?
Okay, thank you. And final answer on what are people looking for with these electoral changes? Khem Khoeun.
Yeah, so when I first became elected, I was elected to the Skokie Park District Board in 2017. That's a nonpartisan board. We had staggered elections. It's at-large representation. And so when I joined the village board in 2021, it was a different system. There was a screening process that went through a group called the Skokie Caucus Party. Their goal was to bring people together from different, it was supposed to be nonpartisan when it came to national political affiliations, whether you're a Democrat, Republican, or independents. The goal was to be able to bring together people for good governance. And so we really didn't talk about policy decisions. It was really more about how do we work together for good governance. And I think over the last 60 plus years, people have gotten very comfortable with it, to the point where they've taken it for granted and just assumed that things will just work the way things have always worked, because Skokie's been relatively quiet, drama-free, and doesn't have a lot of scandals. What we've seen the last couple of years is that people have shifted in terms of their expectations of what government looks like, and I think one of the goals of the electoral reform changes is to promote voter engagement, accountability, and representation. And so I think it remains to be seen, but I think these are things that the voters had voted for because they wanted change, and that's exactly what happened, and that's how we're moving forward. And so we've tried it one way, and now we're trying it another way to see what's going to happen with this new model.
Okay, thank you. I do have another question, but I do want to let you know this is the last question before we go to closing remarks. So once you're done, you can maybe take a deep breath.
Who is it for?
Okay, our first responder to this question will be Gail Schechter. Our final question is, what would you say are 1 or 2 of the best policies that the village board has implemented in the last 2 years?
I'm sorry, what did you say, 1 or 2?
1 or 2, so best policies that the village board has implemented, and it says the past 2 years, so recently.
In the past 2 years, I would say I'm not sure if the sustainability plan being adopted was in the last 2 years, but I would put that at number one. I think that had languished for a while, so I was glad to see that passed. And I would also say another really good policy that the village board adopted, well, some good things that happened that really weren't necessarily the village board, but our ability as residents to be able to convince Westfield to make 3.5% of the new units it's going to have at the mall be affordable. It showed us that that there is some power that the people have to influence our local businesses. And boy, that's actually an international business. So I would leave it there.
Okay, thank you. The same question, best policies that the village board has implemented. Khem Khoeun, do you have a response?
Yeah, a couple things. I think the sustainability plan, the effort that it took in terms of bringing outside consultants to work with us to have a greenhouse emissions survey completed, provide a baseline so that then we can develop goals and measures and track activities toward achieving those goals. I think that was a very comprehensive and proactive strategy that the village is doing as a community that is within a global in a global environment. We need to figure out how we are reacting and responding to and taking responsibility for our role in the environment. We have also implemented a co-responder program in terms of working with the social worker and police to respond to non-emergency calls and to be able to support our residents in that way, and we hope to continue to expand on that program. And then the other thing is there's been a lot of conversation that you're going to hear about, if not already, but soon, the Skokie Village Seal. Process is really important. How we do things is really important, and I'm very proud of that because we did that by engaging the Indigenous community. We had them at the table and having them lead that charge as far as what they felt was necessary in order to envision a new village seal that would incorporate past, present, and future that didn't do harm to their children and to their community members when they look at it. And so that was really important, and this is why I believe representation is important at the table, because you're going to offer a different perspective that others aren't going to be able to see.
Okay, thank you. And the final response to the final question will come from Joe Nowik.
Yes, I'm going to sound like a broken record, but I really, really enjoyed the fact that we created a sustainability plan. We put it in writing. As an engineer, I hate subjective decisions. I like objective. I like data-driven decisions, and the fact that we went to outside consultants and evaluated it and really outlined a thorough document that will guide Skokie moving forward for sustainability, I think was a wonderful, wonderful decision, and we'll be able to springboard many other initiatives in terms of greener spaces as well as better environmental solutions for our housing and more efficient paths for bikes and for walking and things of that nature. So wonderful sustainability. The other initiative that I have to tip my hat to, because I think most politicians don't have the ability to do it themselves, is the term limits that were put on the ballot. I myself decided to impose my own term limits at D219 because as my kids have aged out, I feel it's more appropriate to have board members who have kids in the system who then could really, really evaluate how the system is affecting their families. And those term limits, I think 12 years is an adequate amount of time for folks to follow through with their ideas and their vision for Skokie, but not so long that they become long in the tooth and really aren't helping Skokie any longer in terms of what the correct current vision is for Skokie moving forward. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll now move into our final segment, which are closing remarks that the candidates were able to prepare in advance. So we will begin in reverse order from the way we did our opening remarks. So we'll start with Gail Schechter.
Skokie's motto is Village of Vision, but the village has no clear vision. My vision for Skokie starts with engaging the people and communicating to developers that it is a privilege to do business here, because Skokie has so much going for us. We have a strong enough tax base to give every neighborhood what it needs. I will shift our economic development philosophy from one that relies almost entirely on outside investors to one that starts right here. Let's invest in local businesses, local consumers, local workers by creating an equitable budget that includes small business grants and facilitates mixed income housing. We all benefit when our workforce can live here. Let's rebuild trust. Good local governance means including and not dismissing residents and experts in decision making. In my vision, the village board meets people where they are and uses the power of local government to work on our collective priorities. I will open up our commissions to usher in diverse ideas and experiences. This is what I have done for 40 years, and I will continue to do that as your trustee. I am the right leader for tomorrow's Skokie, one which ensures that all people, no matter what they earn, where they were born, and who they are, have a place at our communal table.
Thank you. Next, we'll hear from Joe Nowik.
First of all, I want to thank you all for engaging this important conversation about Skokie's future. It's the residents that really are the driving force, so thank you. I also want to thank my fellow candidates sitting here. It takes a lot of effort to get out there and to ask for your support and your vote, and I'm very thankful that Skokie this term has 12 candidates when you add the district candidates as well as the at-large candidates running for office. Wonderful. I'm running for Skokie at-large trustee as an independent because I believe in transparent, accountable, and fiscal responsible government that truly serves its residents. And I emphasize the word serves. With my experience in governance, business, and community service, I have the skills to keep Skokie affordable, support local businesses, and ensure smart, responsible growth that benefits everyone. Skokie deserves leadership that shows up, listens to residents, and makes decisions with integrity. I'm committed to revitalize our commercial districts, make government more accessible, and ensure that Skokie remains a great place for families, seniors, and businesses to thrive. Early voting is March 17th. Election day is April 1st. And I just want to thank the League of Women Voters again and the Skokie Public Library for hosting this forum. Please vote. Thank you.
Thank you, and we'll get final remarks now from Khem Khoeun.
I moved here to Skokie 20 years ago. Didn't know that I was going to be here to start a family, and we lived in a multi-generational household. When it was time to move out and have our own place, we decided that there was no better place to move out to but to stay in Skokie. And so I do love Skokie. I realize that it's not perfect and there's work to be done, and I'm willing to roll up my sleeves to work on that. Thank you all for being here tonight and for all your wonderful, thoughtful questions that were presented earlier. It's been an honor to share my vision for Skokie's future with you. I do thank the League of Women Voters and the Skokie Public Library for putting this event together as well. My experiences have shaped my deep commitment to fairness, inclusivity, and equity. As someone who has faced inequity firsthand, I understand the importance of representation and responsibility to leadership, the responsibility of leadership to deliver real results. I am dedicated to ensuring Skokie remains a thriving, safe, and welcoming community. Strong economic development is key to keeping property taxes stable and attracting businesses that benefits everyone. I will continue working to strengthen our local economy while making sure Skokie is a safe place where all families feel safe, secure, and supported. I ask for your vote so I can continue serving our community with dedication, integrity, and a focus on progress. Thank you again for your time and support.
Thank you, and I would love to say some thanks too. The League of Women Voters believes fervently in an informed electorate. I can't say the word, I'm so choked up. An informed electorate, that's you. So thank you to you for being here. Thanks to the candidates too, and good night.